Okay, we're back. Social distancing. What week is it? Week 5 of social distancing. So here we are in the classroom trying to create some kind of a visual examples of how we do this kind of stuff. So typically in the classroom, we would be having everybody with their own mounting boards. We would be cutting up a huge clump of staghorns from a giant ball that was dropped off. We usually get a donation every year of a big staghorn that has become too big for its site and it has fallen, and then people panic. They know it's valuable. They don't know what to do with it. So they'll donate it to the college. And then what we do is on the day that we do our staghorn fern mounting, we will actually cut that up into smaller pieces, into smaller parts that we will mount individually. So when we look around here, we can see that, after we cut up we get all kinds of pieces. We get a little tiny piece like this that looks like it was kind of wedged in a corner. It's got a kind of a pointy back on it. That'll be a bit of a challenge because we'll want to have a flat surface that we mount onto the board. Here's another one that has fallen off its board, and you can see that it has sphagnum moss in the back. And if we were to peel this aside, we could probably get a pretty good idea of where the rhizome would be, where it's kind of clinging to the inside there. The rhizome is, actually, let's look at it here. Here is the rhizome right here. You can see at the end of my finger. That little growth point is actually the rhizome that goes through the shield fronds and into the sphagnum moss here. So this has actually been doing okay. This little piece here has been doing okay, but it just fell off its mount. And so this is another way that you can kind of set the stage for another decade or two of success on a mounting board. You always want to pick, this is an example of one that's been successfully mounted. This was mounted last year on the 4th of April. This is Irving that did this one. And you can see that it's actually perfectly mounted on its board. A couple things I want to point out, because I went and got this because it gives a good example of proper mounting. Do you notice that the shield frond, if you were to look at where the center is and where the rhizome is, it's a little above center on the board, okay? Now, there's a reason for that. We want to have, and you've probably already heard this on the PowerPoint, but we want to make sure we know how this thing will be growing. It's going to send out pups and new shield fronds and new fertile fronds, but it's only going to send them out to the sides, down here, down on the bottom, but rarely on the top. So this basically maintains the level of the staghorn from this point forward. So it's going to expand this way, and this way. So we want to provide it with a little bit of room. If we turn this thing around, you can see that we've used this coated wire. This is 14 gauge coated wire, and we've wrapped it, we've drilled holes through and wrapped it underneath the shield frond, and then tied it in place, and then we twisted it to tighten up that little seat belt. Now this has been mounted for a year, and we don't see any evidence of where that wire was. So the idea is that this will last for 3, 4, 5, 10 years until this shield frond starts to grow over the board and hold this onto the board tightly, almost without any help. But this is how we establish our staghorns, by kind of cinching them to the board with these little seat belts. So this is wire that's been pulled around and then twisted tightly to hold that tightly on to the board. Okay? So it's important to have a configuration of board that matches this. So this can live on the board. These are so slow growing. This can live on the board for probably this board for another 3, 4, 5 years without getting to the edge. Once it does get to the edge, we could tack another 2x2 all the way around these 3 sides, and this can get wider here, here, and here, and still have a home for these as time goes by. Or we could get into a situation where we start out with a board that's a little bit wider. Here, if we were to look at this one, and this is the one that we're going to be doing today, this one by looking at the past shield fronds, we can see that this is already pretty well established. The rhizome is pretty robust, and when it sends out its shield fronds, it's pretty darn big. And so if I were to mount this on the smaller board that I showed you, then this would quickly overgrow that board. So this board here has a size. Now, how do we decide how wide these boards are? Well, this is 1x8 cedar fencing. And so it's either 2 boards wide, 3 boards wide, 4 boards wide, 5 boards wide. And so as these get wider, we just make the fence pieces longer so that it makes a perfect square, okay? So this is a 3-board mounting board. And this would probably mount nicely on this board like this, okay? So that's what we're going to be doing. All right? You can stop.